Good morning. We will call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 20th, 2023 to order. Let the record show we are absent one commissioner, Mr. Bush. First item this morning will be our opening ceremonies Pledge of Allegiance. All right. First item this morning is our order of business. Is there any corrections or changes to our order of business?
Good morning, Mr. President. Commission, no change to the order of business.
Okay. Hearing no changes, Commissioners, I look for a motion to approve the order of business.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the order of business as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Item 2 this morning would be the minutes of the November 15th, 2023 meeting. Is there any corrections to or additions to those minutes? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve them as presented.
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. We will move into our regular agenda item this morning. First item on our agenda is a rezone REZ-006-2023. This will be presented by City Planner Galabert. This is to consider a zoning map amendment from community commercial to public for a property legally described as Block 1 of the Highway Department addition to the City of Dickinson, Stark County, North Dakota. The property is located in the City of Dickinson. Good morning, Mr. Galabert.
Good morning, Chairman Frederick, and good morning, Planning and Zoning Commissioners. Before you is the first of 2 companion petitions to the board associated with the property legally described as Block 1 Highway Department addition. I'll provide an overview during the first of these 2 applications today, with some additional details to follow during the presentation of the special use permit. So, without further ado, let's see if I can get this thing on. There we go. Okay, so the applicant is the North Dakota Department of Transportation District Office, seeking relief from development regulations by rezoning from general commercial to public. Relief is being primarily sought via this petition to permit above ground fuel storage of up to 10,000 gallons of unleaded gasoline and 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel on site. A pre-application meeting on May 30th of this year enabled the City of Dickinson Fire Department to assess this request, and support had been indicated by noting all, quote, all improvements shall be completed according to the International Fire Code requirements. Let's see. Oh, we can stay there. So the public zoning district type typically includes land uses which serve the community at large and are generally beneficial to all residents. The majority of publicly zoned lands in Dickinson are designated for recreational use and daily access by the community. However, in some cases, such as the wastewater treatment plant on Broadway Street, this zoning district is also utilized to enable relatively industrial land uses, so long as they serve the overall public good. And it should be noted that while industrial land uses can be permitted within public zoning, it's important still in those cases to carefully consider where that combination of zoning and land use is most appropriate, despite the value of whatever services are provided. So in this instance, the DOT had prefaced the arrival of surrounding community development, having platted Block 1 Highway Department addition in 1975. Staff has visited the location to discuss possibilities to improve legal non-conformities of certain elements of the property, and to better understand how future development on site will be limited in its industrial nature so as not to impose future land use conflicts, as the property is centrally located along Dickinson's most traveled corridor and at a key location for affecting residential development directly to the east. Let's see if we can find it here. Directly to the east, there, where was I? And the surrounding commercial development. So with understanding and respect of the development history regarding this area, staff believes a rezone from general commercial to public is amenable to the public good. The purposes of the DOT district office and land use conflicts with adjacent properties will be no more or less pronounced following approval of this rezone petition. And most importantly, the future land use map, let's see here. The future land use map in the comprehensive plan establishes this future designation to be civic/public. So far, staff has received no comments from the public and recommends approval of REZ-006-2023 to rezone Block 1 Highway Department Edition from general commercial to public. And the applicant is here today to answer any questions the board might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Galbert. Any questions for staff regarding this? If not, does the applicant have anything they would like to add to that?
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. Andrew Schrank with Highlands Engineering, representing the applicant on this rezone application. Just a note, I believe it is actually community commercial, not general commercial currently. So the request would be for CC to public. The main reason for this, the DOT, it plans to continue the use that's out there today. What really spurred this is they have an existing underground storage tank that needs to be updated. Back in the late 80s, the EPA actually started regulating underground storage tanks and put requirements on underground storage tanks that make that process a bit more costly and difficult, and there's a lot of monitoring requirements. So what the DOT would like to do is put two 12,000-gallon above-ground storage tanks on this site. One would handle gasoline and one would handle their diesel. So that would just be for their use, for their maintenance equipment. The Chapter 13 of the city's fire prevention code only allows a 500-gallon maximum above-ground storage tank on commercial property. So because of that restriction in the city code, we're requesting a change to public. As Mr. Galbert mentioned, that actually matches what is shown in your comprehensive plan. This site is operated by the DOT and the Highway Patrol, so it is a public entity that's operating out of this site. So we believe that the public zoning fits. There is a subsequent application here, a special use permit. Your public zoning district actually does not allow maintenance facilities by definition. They need to be a special use permit. So we would ask that this zone change be contingent on the next special use permit, as we would not want to go public unless that special use permit gets approved as well. With that, I would stand for any questions you may have.
Are they planning on removing the old tank then?
Correct. The old tank would get removed. They would do the new above-ground tank kind of west of where the old tank is, just east of their sand storage that they have out there.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant, commissioners? All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions at this time, we will open the public hearing regarding this rezoning request. If there's anybody in the public that has any comments or concerns regarding the rezone request for this piece of property for the highway department, you can come forward or call into 701-456-7006. Anyone in the public have any comments or concerns regarding this rezoning request? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. If I understand Mr. Schrank right, we would want to make this motion contingent on the approval of the next item we're looking at, so there was a motion to that, to approve or deny the application.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. The condition of screening is not tied to this motion at all. It's the next one, right?
I'd say that there is no condition for screening on either application.
Okay.
And is it correct that this is it GC or is it CC? Just
Well,
curious.
We'll
on
have to go double check. It's been a good while since we looked at the current zoning map for this location. It
Okay.
is neither here nor there, whether it's GC or CC, because it's going to be out of compliance with either of those, and we would be rezoning to public from either of those.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion on action on this item.
Chairman, I have to move the City of Dickens Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval REZ 006 2023 Block 1 of Highway Department addition rezoning from GC or CC to P as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Public or Municipal Code and also be the best interest of the public health, welfare, and safety.
Second.
Is that you, Mike? Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Then we will move on to our next item this morning. This is in relation to the first one. This will be a special use permit, SUP-005-2023. This is to consider a special use permit to allow for a maintenance facility in the public zoning district. The property is legally described as Block 1 of the Highway Department Addition, City of Dickinson, Stark County, North Dakota. The property is located in the City of Dickinson. Mr. Galabert.
Okay, so, let's see, this application is to consider SCP 005, a special use permit to allow a proposed maintenance facility, which would be located near the geometric center of the property as described. This land use is allowed upon approval of a special use permit in the public zone district. According to the transmittal letter submitted for this application, the proposed structure will allow space to park various trucks and equipment indoors where they will not be visible, and that the proposed project will not affect existing traffic patterns. Staff has fully reviewed these assertions and supports their validity. No increase to the scale or scope of operations has been communicated to staff, so there is currently no reason to assume intensification of operations. Rather, the structures proposed would be in furtherance of the current operational capacities and may even serve to screen equipment maintenance as is required by the zoning ordinance. Staff has communicated to the applicant the necessity to screen industrial equipment from view of the 3rd Avenue West corridor overlay and from view of the undeveloped residential properties to the east. We met on site to review the success of the current screening measures using primarily evergreen vegetation and whether that will suffice to screen above ground storage tanks from view. We had also discussed possible solutions to screen the westward view into the property despite topographical limitations. The applicant has expressed interest in continuing to explore possible screening solutions for the proposed new elements. So they will not be put as conditions on the special use permit necessarily, unless the board would wish for that to be a change, as well as reducing the lines of sight for currently existing outdoor equipment storage from residential view. As of the time of this report, staff has received no public comments and recommends approval of SCP-005-2023 to issue a special use permit to allow the construction of a maintenance facility on Block 1, Highway Department Addition.
I guess my only question, is it typical to have a special use permit on publicly? I mean, do we issue special use permits to ourselves?
To ourselves.
Well, I mean, we have public property all over the city that, if we're doing something like this as a city, do we issue a special use permit to ourselves?
Well, the public zoning district, to my understanding, doesn't necessarily mean that the city owns the land, which is publicly zoned. So this would be owned by the Department of Transportation and the special use permit.
Which is the state, I understand that,
Right.
I'm just, I mean,
I guess what I would say there, I mean, I didn't do any history or research on what has previously been done, but on a go-forward basis, we do intend to bring in, for example, with the Baylor Building expansion, we'd bring in that project for a pre-application meeting. We would review the zoning, we would review all the different circumstances and make sure that all applicable requirements in our ordinances are required and followed, similar to private development. So, and that could be something, I guess, if it's ultimately, I guess ultimately it seems a little bit unique from a public zoning standpoint that there would be restrictions on, for example, a maintenance facility. So that could be something for an ordinance amendment that we could consider in the future and present at a later date. So.
I mean, typically it's the city, county, or state that's gonna own the public property.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or possibly Park District, which may have
Park
maintenance
District.
equipment as well. So, yeah.
I mean, I was just wondering, I mean, if we, if this was our site, would we be issuing a special use permit to ourselves, so?
In this case, we'd have to look, for example, the Broadway facility, street department Broadway facility, that would likely fall under similar circumstances because it's a maintenance facility. So without thorough review, I would say yes, depending upon the circumstances of what exactly they're trying to do down there. So
Okay.
again, it would be something we intend to, regardless of what's been done in the past, we intend to follow all applicable city code the same, whether it's private development or city development or other government agency development, so.
I just wonder the legality, I mean, could we actually tell the state no on this? I mean, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, could we actually say, no, you can't do this? Probably not.
I think that there would be a challenge there, but.
Exactly. That's the point I'm
but-
trying to get across,
yeah.
so.
I think that this is something that we can take a look at as we work towards.
I mean, I know they're good partners and they're gonna work with us. I mean, it just,
Yep,
I, d-
I have
when
no
it's
doubts.
public, I think it's hard for us to tell them they can't do what they wanna do on their own property, but,
Yeah, so
okay,
I think it's an opportunity for improvement, so.
yeah. Did you have any other comments, Mr. Gelliber?
Nope, I was just waiting for any.
Okay, any comments for Mr. Gelliber before I open the public hearing on this?
Are they adding additional vehicles to, because they have their trucks out there now, don't they?
That'd be a question for the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. No, the plan is to continue their operations as
Yeah.
is. I mean, they wouldn't add any vehicles above and beyond what they're normally doing. They are adding in the future. They're not sure which fiscal year it'll fall in yet. But on that site plan we had sent, there's like 100 by 200 roughly cold storage building they want to add to get some vehicles indoors, get them out of the weather. So that, as Mr. Galbert stated, will help screen some of these vehicles. And then largely, the main desire here was to get those above-ground storage tanks that we referenced on the site, so.
Yeah, I was just,
Operations will continue as is.
yeah, I was just wondering if they're adding additional vehicles or bringing it just for traffic on 22, if it changed any traffic there or anything like that, so.
I mean, I,
think it helps with the flow of traffic within that area. I have to fuel out there all the time in the state vehicle, and going over to the building there where if there was a snow emergency going on, large equipment's moving, this kind of takes it, and it moves it central closer to Highway 22, so.
I mean, I think a few years back, ideally, that this property would be better used for something else if they relocated, but being where it's at in our city, but I don't think we're gonna talk them into that very easily, so.
We did have some conversations around that and asked pointedly, do you ever have plans to relocate? I think that was a definitive no, and ultimately there was discussions around just the sheer cost of relocating. You know, it'd
Yeah.
be very, very costly. So, and I guess the city ultimately grew around the facility. When they originally platted it, it is actually interesting looking.
When I
at
was a
some of
kid,
the-
there was nothing north of the interstate, so,
Yeah.
or very little anyway, so. All right, thank you. Unless there's any other questions, and we've already kind of heard from the applicant, unless you have any other questions for Andrew on this. If not, I will open the public hearing on this special use permit. If anyone in the public has any comments or concerns regarding SUP-005-2023, please step forward or call into 701-456-7006. Anyone in the public or online have any comments or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make a motion. I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of SUP 005-2023 as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. We'll move on to item C this morning. This is Renaissance Zone Development Plan amendments. This will be presented by Mr. Josephson. This will be a public hearing to consider amendments to the Chapter 4 of the City of Dickinson Renaissance Development Plan. Mr. Josephson.
Thank you, Chairman Friedrich. Commissioner Steve Josephson. As was stated, these are proposed amendments to the Renaissance Zone Development Plan. These are text amendments. If you can recall, a few weeks ago, we did a workshop item talking about the changes to the Century Code that were approved this past year, that local governments can adopt to their Renaissance Zone plan. And I just wanted to go over what these are. The first one would increase the tax exemption period for residential rehabilitation projects from 5 years to 8 years. It would also increase the benefit period for commercial projects to 8 years if the investment amount is at least 75% of the true and full value of the property. It also allows properties that have received Renaissance Zone benefits, additional benefits after 30 years have lapsed from the completion of the initial project. We don't have any projects like that yet, but in the next few years that will happen. And also allows for 2 exemptions or islands to the primary contiguous zone. The city currently has one of those. And in speaking with staff, from Department of Commerce, they said in order to enact these individual cities need to amend their Renaissance Zone development plans to actually reflect these, and that's why we're here today. If you remember from the workshop we had a couple of months ago, these were things that were done. They were based upon comments that had been received by cities and staff at Commerce that would be more advantageous to the cities and would encourage could encourage additional economic development within the Renaissance zones. Staff recommends approval based on the findings in the staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Josephson, have we identified changing our?
Not yet, no. We have.
That's a future, possibly, if we're gonna change our, because we can't add any more blocks than we have, but we could have another island, right?
Right.
But we'd have to take something out,
Which
though.
means you gotta take something out, and keep in mind, commissioners, once you remove a property, you can't put it back in. And the one I like to talk about is the block where the old city hall was. And that got taken out, and now that there are opportunities to develop that, it's, yeah. So if there are any other ones that, if you're gonna create another island or move blocks around, that's a separate action.
It can never be put back in
No,
forever?
it can't be put back. Once it's removed, it can't be put back in. Either it's been removed because the projects there were completed, or it was deemed an area that was deemed that other areas needed to take advantage of the zone more than the zone benefits than that particular block.
Have we seen any applications recently?
We are supposed to get one in that would come to the commission in February. I just spoke to somebody, the other day, and until it, once it comes in, you'll know. But
Yeah.
it's a piece of property. We've been talking to people for a while about this.
I mean, it's a heck of a program for people to redevelop old properties, so.
I think one of the big advantages is gonna be the 30-year, allowing people to redevelop after 30 years, because I think we've seen some projects where, yes, they were developed early on in the program, and the use has changed, or the economy has changed, and the buildings are being underutilized. So, one other thing I do want to mention is that the city's Renaissance Zone extension runs out this summer. So we'll be bringing back a request to expand the zone, and one of the changes to the Century Code would allow a city to go from 5 years renewal to a 10-year renewal.
Okay.
Of course, it still has to get approval from the county commission and the school board, because they're taxing authorities. And one of the things I was told is that in that approval, it's got to specifically reference the 8 years, the 8-year
75% thing when they, you know, when they vote, when those bodies vote to, if those bodies vote to support a
Have-
10-year expansion.
Have we
I
had
just
any,
wanted to put that on the
have we
record.
had any discussions with
Not
those
yet.
entities? Okay.
Not yet, but I know the chair of the county commission is here today, so.
All right.
But we'll start that, you know, we'll start that up come the beginning of the year, and I'll do a workshop. We'll do it, staff will do a workshop about the renewal for 10-year period.
Okay. Mr. Bowling, did you have a question?
Yeah, several meetings ago, I think we were going to try to identify those blocks that had been removed. Have we ever done that?
Which ones have been removed?
Yes, that are no longer eligible?
I can put that together.
Can we? Okay, that'd be good.
I can put that together. Many of them were on the south side. And then there were some near Dickinson State University. And the idea was to rezone that area, do an overlay district that would allow for small businesses that could serve the university area. And after having a public hearing on that, let's put it this way, the people who showed up weren't interested in that.
Okay.
The previous president at Dickinson State University was very much interested in that, but
Sure.
the people who showed up at that public meeting were not. But I can just give you, I can send you maps
Perfect.
of previous Renaissance zones, you know, so that you see what happens.
Mr. Josephson, I'm circling back to applications. Were any applications ever received for the island that was created? For the
I'll
Renaissance Zone?
just say not yet. So,
So no, okay,
no, not yet.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? And this is a public hearing, correct?
Yes.
All right. If there's no other questions, we will open the public hearing regarding this Renaissance Zone plan amendments. Anyone in the public have any comments or concerns? You can step forward or call into 701-456-7006. Anyone in the public have any comments or concerns regarding the Renaissance Zone amendments? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we would look for a motion to approve these text amendments.
I'll make a motion. I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the amendments to the City of Dickinson Renaissance Zone as being compliant with the City of Dickinson Comprehensive Plan and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next item 4 on our agenda this morning is public issues of concern not on our agenda. This is a time for anybody in the public that has any concerns they'd like to present to the commission that was not on our agenda. They can come forward now. Since the room is empty, I don't think we'll probably see anybody, but anybody in the public have any comments or concerns? All right, we will close that portion of our meeting. Item 5 is items not on the agenda. This is from Kim for commissioners. If there's anything you guys would like to bring up that we did not talk about today. All right, hearing none, we will close that item 5. Move on to item 6. This is our work session for this morning. The first item on our work session is entrance signs. This will be presented by, it says Loretta, but I don't see her today, so.
Good morning. I'll present on her behalf.
Okay.
This is something that actually just yesterday we had a work session with the City Commission and presented some options related to entrance signs. This has been a topic that's been ongoing for some time, and ultimately part of the intent that's been communicated by the City Commission has been to try to get some of these entrance signs in place ahead of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library opening. So what we were looking at with this was specifically some entrance signs that would basically highlight or provide kind of that wayfinding opportunity that, hey, we've really entered the city of Dickinson. It would be aesthetically pleasing. It would have a clear line of sight so that it's not just something you see for a very short period of time as you're traveling down the road and then ultimately pass right by it. So we identified a handful of different areas where these signs are possibilities. Doesn't mean that each of these locations pinned on the map are designated or that we need to have a sign there. It would just be some combination of these locations. Throughout talks as well, there's been discussions around kind of focusing on each of the quadrants as you come into the city, or focusing on the highest traffic volumes and some of those kind of things. So on to next slide. So we looked at also, we could go kind of a handful of different ways, I guess, on this topic. You could either look at unique or individual signs at each location that kind of fit the circumstances at each location, or we could look at doing a single sign type and ultimately moving forward in that direction. So I know the images are a little bit small, but we'll go into the bigger images in future slides. So in this case, kind of on the north end of the community, this would be more of a standard brick and mortar type sign. We'd look at lighting opportunities, availability to commercial power, or whether we'd go to a solar option. We'd look at some kind of low maintenance landscaping around, and then ultimately, work with other agencies as far as DOT and county to make sure that where we're placing these is acceptable and all those kind of things. Another option for a sign, I'll caveat this one, I guess, where it was drawn. I don't think that there's any way that this will ultimately work for the actual placement shown, because it's ultimately in the borrow ditch, but ultimately if you move this up the hill a little bit further, I think it could be a great opportunity. Another brick and mortar sign option with some landscaping, and then maybe we could mount some lighting either on the sign or again shine the light onto the sign so that at night you can see that, especially during the winter months where it's dark, so many hours of the day. Another alternative that we looked at, again, a brick and mortar type sign, some landscaping, lighting, etc. And then we did look at, due to the elevation circumstances, we looked at the possibility of an elevated sign, more of a steel structure rather than a brick and mortar type sign. In this particular case, this is on the west business loop as you're coming up on the overpass over the interstate. And so it's just an alternative option, I guess. And then finally, another brick and mortar type sign with some landscaping, lighting, etc. This is at the intersection of Villard and 10th Avenue East. Based on comments, well, I guess I'll open it up to comments or feedback before I share comments from the City Commission work session yesterday.
Any
That,
comments?
that sign already exists, correct?
That would be, basically in the current location, and so it would just be removing the previous sign and whatnot, so.
Do you know how many exist at the moment? Because I know there's one over on the State Avenue Villard corner, I believe, as well.
And then then there's one up on Highway 22 by Museum Drive. I can't think of any others, I guess, off the top of my head.
I think that's probably the only three we have, I think.
So,
Have you had, excuse me, have you had discussion with the DOT, because I know with our fairgrounds south of town, they didn't want us to put a sign in the right of way at all for their.
yeah, there's a lot of criteria from the DOT. For example, so we've had conversations with DOT, a host of other agencies as well, but ultimately with the DOT, for example, you can't have any kind of text that's associated with any form, even if it's a sponsor for an event, you can't actually list that business name on the sign because it's advertising, and the DOT doesn't allow that in their right of way, for example. There's a host of other criteria as well, so.
I know we tried to even get a sign, showing it's fairgrounds, county fairgrounds, and they didn't allow that either, so.
Oh, interesting. like I said, we've had a couple of different meetings with the district engineer, and what we're ultimately proposing was currently acceptable in what he was requiring, as well as we had some minor conversations with the local government staff from Bismarck.
So with that, I mean, the one we have on Third and Museum Drive, I mean, that's got an electronic sign aspect. I mean, with what you're saying, would they even allow that then? Because that changes all the time. The
Yeah,
text.
you just have to be very, very cautious on what you're putting on there. So, and whether that's
So you
fully,
can advertise an event, but you can't advertise like a sponsor to an event.
no sponsor, no business names, no anything like that. So
Gotcha.
if some food vendor was providing food for the event, you can't say that food is provided by this or whatever. That those are things that are not acceptable. So, and like I say, there's actually a pretty good list of criteria that's not allowed.
I mean, if we did do an electronic component, would that be something our marketing department would probably be in charge of? Do you foresee, or?
In that case, I know that there's been discussions with the marketing group within city, and exactly, in this case, we've more so focused on the brick and mortar type signs, not so much the digital type signs and whatnot, so.
I know in the past, I think CVB's taken care of the one on Third, if I remember right, but.
Correct, yep, and there were some conversations with the CVB as well, so.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Josh?
I don't know if you're going on to the next slide, but the location, or is that the first slide with the locations, is that just potential locations, or is that what you guys want to do is all those locations?
No, certainly not all the
About the locations, can I answer that one? Because Loretta and I drove out to each of these locations to get a good look. It's a bit harder to do it from an aerial image. So, you know, they're relatively flexible if you want to pick an entirely different location or just kind of tweak it in these locations, but it would kind of, where we selected so far are very context driven in terms of both the right-of-way between what's federal right-of-way, what's DOT owned right-of-way, and where there are ditches, where there are hills, if it's going to be in front of a business, and kind of give it a awkward, create an awkward situation there. So, but while the locations are a little less flexible because they're a bit more empirically driven, the designs of the signs are really, those alternatives are really just there for getting a discussion started, so they could be pretty much anything.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
And then ultimately, to answer the question, no, these would not all be designated. It would just be a series of these. We would likely pick maybe 4 or 5. So.
I know we had this discussion yesterday about the roundabouts that are coming, but they won't allow any signage in the middle of those either, so.
Yeah, with the West Business Loop project, which includes a roundabout at Old Highway 10 and West Villard, and then ultimately 8th Street and Highway 22, both of those roundabouts, we talked about having the entrance signs maybe even in the middle as a landscape feature in the middle of the roundabout, and the DOT is not amenable to that. Other states do allow other features and other types of things within the roundabouts. The DOT does not. And that's just, we also looked at, there was some, I'm not, the actual term of the additional funding, I can't recall, but it was more so to, enhancement funding, I think it was, to enhance, kind of beautify the route and whatnot. So there were some additional dollars allocated for the West Business Loop specifically. We looked at ultimately if this could qualify for the enhancement funds. At first, there was some ideas that yes, it could. Then it was ultimately determined by Federal Highway Administration it could not be used for this. So, kind of got optimistic for a second there, and then we lost that one. So.
All right.
Commissioner Frederick, do you want to share which one was ultimately identified by city commissioners as their favorite, or does anybody have any specific opinions on which ones you guys like best?
I mean, I think as a commission, during the workshop, we kind of gravitated towards that one as being the nicest design, but I don't know, what's your guys' thoughts?
I can see them on the interstate. I mean, that makes sense to me as you're driving in, but I don't know.
Well, that's what we had discussed last night also, is, you know, the exits off the interstate would be as you're coming in, if we can find locations where, I mean, that's where you're gonna get your most people coming off into town. Where those I mean, I guess the first you know, out by Tiger Discounting, you know, that would, if you could get one there somewhere, that would cover, you know, also Highway 10 coming in too, so. I mean, I think there's a, placement would be, you know, something we could look at. And I think we, you know, we're trying to limit it to around that 5 number, you know, I think we identified 7 there at possible locations, but I think 5 was kind of where we were trying to stay, but.
Yeah, as I had mentioned, so we do have dollars allocated in the capital improvement project budget for this in particular. And so ultimately the funding for it was designated or allocated out of the sales tax. And this is a high variance estimate at 500,000, just because there's so many things that could be different as far as what types of signs were selected or desired, types of materials, the exact locations, proximity to commercial power, and what it would take to drop a meter, or possibly having to look at solar options for any lighting, some of those kind of things. So there's a lot of different variables that'll affect the cost, and we need to dig into that more. We're more so looking for the feedback from both the City Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission on you know, kind of style or the aesthetic aspects. And then from there, we can start digging into costs and, you know, some of the challenges or what other attributes or risks there might be to the kind of more highly desirable signs that were preferred, as well as we can start looking deeper into the specific locations.
In the end, who determines location and sign type? Is it just you're getting feedback and whomever? Or?
Well, I think once we've identified, I mean, we have a lot of research to do. I think those 7 locations we have to identify right away, and if we have it, if we can or can get it. I mean, I think there's a lot of variables there, and I think once we have that, we'd probably bring that back to both this board and the commission maybe for some input.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, and I think at that point even we'll bring it back early enough so that there's still some flexibility to look at kind of more fine tuning rather than ideally we wouldn't maybe scrap a whole design, but we'd kind of fine tune and whatnot and make some minor changes at that point in time. So,
You know, I mean, like that one there, I mean, that might not be a location if we get something coming in on 10 out by, you know, the interstate closer where you come, actually the first part of Dickinson, but, you know, I think there's just a lot of things to talk about and look at, so.
And like I said, I think that's an existing sign anyway.
Yeah, I think there is
I
something.
don't know how many people see it, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that one and the one on the other corner of State and Villard, I mean, that one's kind of tucked in there with the gas station, but.
yeah, as well as likely they're in a little bit of need for maybe some maintenance or
Yeah.
something along those lines. So.
Agreed, so. Anything else, commissioners, regarding the entrance signs? All right, thank you, Josh. And then next item on our work session is the Planning Department monthly report, and that will be presented by Mr. Galabert.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, what are the next steps with the entrance sign?
So I guess from here, we'll start pinning down, looking at specifically the design that was provided as far as feedback. If you have any other feedback, by all means, let us know by email or phone call, whatever that may be. And then we'll start looking more deeply into specific locations based on some of the feedback, not only the designs that were recommended, start also looking at some of the other challenges, like I had mentioned, as far as actual availability to utilizing that right-of-way space. If one circumstance just leads to too much trouble, maybe we'll look at abandoning that spot and look at another spot and whatnot. Look at, like I say, availability to commercial power, what those costs might be, and ultimately try to get a better cost estimate as far as pin down something a little bit more specific. So
And the planned opening for the museum is when?
25.
25, so this is a 24 project?
we'd like to execute this in 24 during the construction season of 2024. So
All right. You're up.
Okay, thank you. City Planner Matthew Gallagher. This is, I guess, the first of a monthly report series. So let's see how it goes. And we're, in the theme of this one, looking for some guidance regarding the submittal deadlines and requirements. We're proposing some changes, and so we'll be looking for your thoughts on that. So the current ordinance is to petition the planning and zoning by the first Friday of the month prior to the desired meeting date. I should note that this is technically, if you really look through the code, seems only absolutely required for major plats, but it would be a good practice to follow for minor plats and rezones. Rezones take a fair bit of review to do. Minor plat and major plat, sometimes the difference is as small as just 4 or 5 lots. So we will be looking to sort of resume this as an official deadline beginning in February 2024, meaning the next submittal deadline would be the first Friday of January. And to apply the 2023 solutions to the planning process that we've been kind of working on the internal side, kind of really ironing out the data sharing communications, templating of staff reports, et cetera, et cetera. So we are going to be a bit more efficient. So probably combining with established deadline and submittal criteria will make this more, hopefully, of a seamless process. And then we can adjust in 2025 as needed after we observe those results. So in addition to that, we're looking to move the planning and zoning meeting from the 3rd to the 2nd Wednesday of the month. This would enable us to have a bit of a window between the planning and zoning meeting approval and the city commission meeting approval. There are various reasons why that might be beneficial. In terms of the calendar, this can shorten the waiting period for the applicant as opposed to doing the first Friday of the month prior without changing this, moving it up by an additional week, for example. And so this would, on average, pan out to about 23 business days per review. In the summer, this can, go up to over a dozen applications. So while now it might seem like we wouldn't need that much time, in the summer it really won't feel like much time at all. So in that review period, these things are generally, this is the panoply kind of, to review all the submitted documents and ensure the application is complete. That's a requirement for us to even put it to the board. To cross-reference the application against all of our municipal codes, do a site visit. We try to do this as often as possible, especially when there's any special use permit, rezone, or if the plat is going to have any kind of unique elements to it, to understand the geography, traffic, surrounding property, accessibility, et cetera. Then we'll need to coordinate and sometimes negotiate with the applicant as needed. Perform a technical review of the proposed plat elements. Engineering will need to make sure that all the existing easements are in place and that the plat can basically be recorded at the county. Then we need to prepare the public notice and create staff reports, recommendations, follow up with the applicant, and sometimes maybe have more, I guess, negotiation, if you will. So then the desired outcomes would be to reduce some administrative errors. Hopefully they'll be minor, if ever. Allow time to conduct complete field visits respective to each application with a short window or with a varying window. It can result in sometimes we get, we're allowed to kind of, or enabled to go and perform this full review, do the site visit, and sometimes it's just, we have a week to do it, and so we just have to use our data that we have here. That can clearly be a problem in terms of equity. So this will allow time to complete all that and establish adequate time to coordinate with the applicant. Again, especially important regarding special use permits and sometimes plats. And as I said, to promote fair and even and consistent application of the zoning code. So this is how the calendar would look with the second Wednesday of the month, the submittal deadlines and the meeting dates, and would be posted on the city website. The applicants would reference this before they're even able to apply. It would be one of the first pages. And then in the future, we would hope to have built out and concise sort of process roadmap for each application type, because there are times where it's quite clear that some applicants are very savvy with the process and some have no idea where to even start. And so I guess before getting to the comprehensive plan and transportation plan, very short update. I'll solicit any comments or questions.
I know there's been issues in the past with getting, the press is only issued on Wednesdays and you have to issue those public notices to the press. Is there any potential change to that, or is that continuing to have to be the press as your public notice? Or that was, I guess, my one question.
So that's a question that I think it's best if we dig into a bit before giving a very solid answer. Maybe Sylvia or Christina here can give you a good one, because it's a little unclear whether it has to be the Dickinson Press. To the best of my understanding, it needs to be a recognized journalistic source locally, and I'm not sure if I think we have another one, I'm not sure, but it needs to be that. And then there's the online edition option, but that needs to be basically a facsimile of an actual newspaper. So we can't put it on just the city website or anything like that. And that does give us an extra few days to utilize the online edition, but we would like to probably still go with the print edition so that we can keep our options open in terms of their submittal deadlines.
I know there was some issues with the submittal deadline for the press
Yeah.
being like 2 weeks prior or something. I don't remember what it was, but I mean, it was always a conflict. I mean, it cuts it close, if I remember right, but.
Yeah, as far as the printed aspect, they like to have almost a week ahead of time, and I guess I can understand where they're coming from. You know, they have to be able to put all their information together and make sure that they're, you know, not cutting something off from one page to the next, et cetera, whatever the circumstance. I've never worked in the printing industry or anything like that. I can only imagine just even putting together staff reports and whatnot, making sure that they flow and they don't look, you know, odd or things like that. So yeah, usually Wednesday or Thursday of the week prior to when the publication will actually come out. You have to have that out. And then there's I think Century Code is 15 days. So you start adding up all of that time before the actual meeting, and just simply the publication timing and deadlines is altogether challenging, and that's unique for planning and zoning. That's not, it's not the same requirements for city commission and whatnot. So it's definitely unique. In this case, though, for example, using what we're proposing in particular, moving the meeting to the second Tuesday, there's several advantages, and where we have moved the meeting before, it's been successful. For example, with the rezone, so we could ultimately bring the rezone to the next city commission meeting. For example, if this meeting was last Wednesday, we could have brought that to the city commission and ultimately had that hearing. Now, in that case, I believe that's 2 hearings, but nonetheless, it still truncates the timeline. Special use permits or minor plats, some of those things where it's only a single hearing at planning and zoning and then a single hearing at city commission, we could ultimately trim quite a bit of time off of those applicants' timelines. So there's some value. The one other aspect, you know, weeks like, for instance, last week coming into this week, those are extremely busy times for staff because we're trying to load all the agenda items for the city commission plus planning and zoning commission. And so it really kind of bottlenecks the week or week and a half around that timeline. In this case, that would help spread some of those weeks out. So we'd have a series of weeks where we're prepping all of the staff reports and all the agenda items and all those kind of things. So it'll help kind of spread or allocate our workload a little bit, but also at the end of the day, though, getting those timelines down is what we're trying to achieve. But still, good quality, solid reviews up front is what we're really focused on.
But it does, I mean, it shortens the time for legal to get the ordinance written from 2.5 weeks to less than a week. Because, now the meeting's after the second meeting of the month, so you've got that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to prep well ahead of time in the assumption, and we can always table something off a city commission if something doesn't pass, or if it gets tabled here, then we can always pull that back and whatnot, and
And have we talked to the people that use our services the most?
we were
about
first
this?
gonna get some feedback here and then ultimately bring it back to the development community and the firms that do this work the most.
Well, I mean, the
But-
schedule change though would be starting like today.
Uh,
Actually, we already missed the submittal deadline.
For February.
February, we're gonna start.
I think that would be, January 1st or 5th?
And what about pending applications that we've already given a schedule to?
Those would be unaffected as well. So this would be for the February meeting, and we have no applications so far. We could move it to the March one just to make it more of a seamless transition as well.
If you guys think it can be done, I don't know, what do you guys have any scheduling conflicts with moving our meeting up a week going forward?
I don't, but are we proposing moving the January meeting to the 2nd?
Beginning in February.
Okay, so that January 10th meeting, it'd be
That's
7th.
just for the, I guess, when we went through and just built the calendar,
Okay, so it'd be the
for the-
17th.
right?
Okay.
And again, this was something, I guess, that we wanted to, well, like I say, we've had to move a couple of meetings for different purposes, whether it be holidays or other circumstances. We tried this as far as we were able to move applications straight from P and Z the following week right to that Tuesday city commission meeting, and we were successful there. There are, it really puts us on our toes to make sure that we're loading everything correctly on from one agenda to the next and whatever else, but, I think we've hinted at this mildly to the development community with no assurances or anything, but we're most sort of looking for feedback.
I like the idea of trying to shorten the process for the applicant, because it seems like, it does get extended out because you missed that second commission meeting, and if you need 2 commission meetings, then, you're pushed into a whole nother month, where this would probably cut off a couple weeks at least, so.
Yeah, and I think especially, like I say, with the applications where they're A, approval at planning and zoning, then A, approval at city commission, that really brings that timeline down. But nonetheless, even though it may not look as dramatic, even on a major plat application, that still trims the timeline down overall, so.
Okay.
And that's my question with print media, I guess. Who requires the print media? Because is that a cog to you guys or not?
With it, I just wanted to clarify. So
Yeah.
for the e-edition, we can put it on their digital. Now.
Okay.
There's new bill that passed that lets us do that. And
Okay.
that shortens the timeline that we have to get it to
Okay.
them a lot. If we have to do that, I think right now we're preferring to do it in print, but if
Okay.
something happens, that we want to get it on sooner.
I
we
just
don't
thought it
have
was
as much time.
required to go into the print,
Not
printed
anymore.
press.
And
Okay.
We've
Okay.
also talked about, there's nothing wrong with advertising something and then pulling it off the agenda if they're not prepared either.
Yeah, and that's something that we'd rather get it on the agenda. The challenge is we've literally gone right up to the deadline days where we don't even have the appropriate information to create a legal ad that would work. So we've literally I've been in Mr. Galibert's office and I've been scrambling literally on a Friday afternoon where we've begged and pleaded with I shouldn't say begged and pleaded, but we've asked for forgiveness from the Dickinson Press, and ultimately kind of a favor, and then ultimately Friday afternoon we're punching out a legal ad for to meet the deadline so that it gets in the paper on Wednesday. So that's we've jumped through those hoops, we've pushed those timelines and whatnot. Is that ideal? No. That's where errors occur and some of those kind of things. So that's why kind of honoring that timeline that's in the ordinance, and again, that's specific to major plats, but you could infer maybe that should be a standard across the board. And again, that could be maybe an ordinance update or amendment that may be of value to look more so at a process holistically. And then we can always be flexible, especially in months like this where we have a lighter workload and lighter number of applications. We can flex that timeline a little bit then. But on months where we're, I think it was June or something, we had 9 or 10. Those get to be extremely busy months for us, putting all that stuff together. So
Yeah, I think I'm fine with it if you guys don't have any concerns. So, all right.
Okay.
Thank you,
And-
Mr. Gilbert.
maybe we look at then March
you have a
as
little
the
bit more here, I
start.
suppose.
Maybe we look at March as the start, so that we have a little bit more time to present this and look for feedback.
Yeah, I would think that would be probably the best. Planning the March 13th is our first meeting on the new system, if that works for you guys, so.
That will work.
Do you have to have an actual motion or anything to change any of that?
Christina?
I don't think that's necessary. I think
I'm
that's
just-
just internal staff operations, and we'll have to just remember to be here a week early, so.
All right, Mr. Gilbert?
So to finish it off,
Yep.
monthly report for the comprehensive plan, transportation master plan. Just so happens that the kickoff meeting is this week after this meeting. So there will be more hopefully to report in the next month. This will include progress updates that we get from the consultants as well as preliminary findings. And this project timeline, I should amend this from saying may need adjustment to has been adjusted, and we received their revised timeline this week as well due to the contract approval delays. So we'll send you an updated Gantt chart there. And through the process, there's going to be a sort of a study review committee panel, which will be established. This is going to feature key stakeholders and should include representation of the Planning and Zoning Board. It's going to be, mainly the goal is to have several people, maybe a dozen, who knows where that number will fall, to basically have this varied perspective. So we'll be looking for at least some representation from Planning and Zoning Commission in some way. And so more information to come, I guess, next month.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gilbert? All right. Thank you. Moves on to our last item this morning. Motion to adjourn unless you guys have anything else.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.